All right, so for more, we are now joined by Advocate Sepanya-Mogale, and who's the chairperson, rather, for the Commission for Gender Equality, as well as Nompilo Mkhize, who's a motivational speaker and a community activist. Ladies, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Advocate, maybe let's perhaps start with you from a gender equality and societal norms perspective. How deeply ingrained do you believe gender norms are, as well as cultural practices, and the influence in terms of the prevalence of teenage pregnancies? What strategies do you think can be employed to combat some of these challenges that the norms present?
I think as Leslie Ann has pointed out, all of this is embedded in a context of patriarchy, which basically looks at the woman's body as someone else's property and someone else's tapestry to play around with. And therefore, where society feels you have failed, you have been pregnant too early, it is the woman who gets blamed. Later on, if you're unable to have children, you are not good enough, you are not a woman enough. Later on, after you've had children, your value has actually been exhausted. Your currency has been completed. That is why, so many things happen to older women, and everyone else looks at the older women with so much disdain, including other women. So that's where the first problem is. And this then results in young men themselves actually feeling, I own that body, but owning it from a point of for my own pleasure. That is why there isn't any responsibility that gets taken by the young men who are the fathers of these babies. And then you have the older men who, once again, are using this woman's body, the young girl's body, for their own pleasure and walking away afterwards, or actually feeling, I can take care of you with the bare minimum. After all, I'm giving you something. You should be grateful. Not actually acknowledging, and society also not acknowledging the damage that this does for an entire lifetime of that child.
Certainly. Nompilo, you run an NPO called Mntwana Thanda Umntwana Wakho. You work very closely with young girls who've gone through the journey of teenage pregnancy, a personal story for you yourself. Just talk to us about some of the societal pressures that young girls may find themselves in, where we even say where society is blaming them for finding themselves at a place where they have to be young mothers.
Good evening. I might say that the only problem or some people that face is that there is a gap between them and their parents. So the gap of feeling loved and appreciated by your parents, and then they find that the perpetrator always finds that gap and always willing to fill it in. So that way it comes from, and then we shy away with it and say it's a peer pressure. It's because maybe you fail to behave at home or to carry out whatever that your parents taught you. So it comes out as that. But then it's one of the things that we come across, that we always have that void. Because sometimes our parents do not tell us the truth that we need to know, like how the older people used to tell them when they grow up. So it's a challenge that we have, that our parents must tell us what we should expect, as much as we learn from schools and stuff, but then they must tell us the truth, and then they must show us the love that we need, because when we go out there and we meet these guys, we meet these people, they always tell us what we need to hear, like, I love you. We lack that as especially as Black people. We lack that, telling our kids we love them all the time, reminding them how important they are. So
Right.
when we go out there, we meet those people, they're always willing to tell us the nice things that we want to hear. So that's where they come in. That's where they come into play with the mind of a young person. And then they always have these nice things maybe you do not get at home,
Right.
or your parents do not talk about with you.
And that creates that gap. Advocates, speaking about that gap that Nompilo is raising, where we find that parents are not that safety net for young people. Where does then the role, especially when it comes to access to reproductive health, play for young women in South Africa to be able to know what it is that they need to do in order to prevent a teenage pregnancy?
Yeah, it's, in the study that we undertook as the Commission for Gender Equality, we found that the lack of financial availability for young people to be able to access contraception contributed in early and unwanted pregnancies. So I think if there was a communication between parents and young people, there would be better access and use without having to rely on where can I get money if I don't get the money to access contraception and vulnerable. So it would close that gap. However, we also need to be careful not to put the entire blame on the parents and on the teenager. There is the predator out there that cannot now get away with murder. There are people who are preying on children, adults who are preying on children. And we need to shift the spotlight to them. Because once we talk about pregnant parents, sometimes it's almost like, oh, it's as a result of lack of parental care. Whereas it is the manipulation by predators that attracts people. That results in this, because you then get attracted to the manipulation rather than the actual love. It's manipulation.
And Nompilo, do you find that the young girls that you work with actually realize this, that there is a perpetrator that has taken advantage, that has manipulated them, that has gotten them into the situation so that there is no repeat to the cycle?
It's a pity that we usually realize after, and it's very sad, because some of us we do not recover from that. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of youngsters out there who are now doing drugs, who are on substance abuse because of postpartum depression or depression caused by the circumstances they face during teenage pregnancy. So with the people that I've worked with, fortunate enough, because now I have the information about postpartum depression and taking care of mental health. It's easier to work with them and to help them recover and for them to move on and carry on with their lives.
And being on the ground with many of these young girls, what would you pinpoint as their daily struggles in order for them just to meet their everyday needs? Nompilo?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Just talk to us about the daily struggles that the young girls often experience in terms of maybe getting food, not only for themselves, but for the children now that they have given birth to. What is it that they face as everyday challenges?
The problem starts when some of us, like me, for an example, I was kicked out at home. I had to go out and look for shelter at the age of 17 years with a newborn baby, because I got the message while I was in the hospital that I mustn't come back at home. So for me, that was a challenge. It was very challenging. It was very hard. But I was able to start something. I started selling so that I can provide for the child, because the father of the child wasn't there, of which it's some of the things that we face, because we get pregnant and then the partner runs away or doesn't want to be part of raising the child. So that's number two. And then you find that you need to not go to school in order for you to take care of the child, because now you do not have money to pay the daycare, to to leave maybe by the care center or anything and then go back to school. So you'll have to take a gap year or be left behind in school. So that's challenge number 3. And then some face those challenges and then begin to start to look for money in the other ways, and of which that way they lose it because some decide to sell their bodies in order for them to feed their kids. And luckily enough, I didn't fall for that. I was able to start. I remember I started selling Tupperware. I used to sell in the train. I used to sell in the bus. And I went back to school. My daughter, when I go to school, I used to leave her at the daycare, and I was breastfeeding. So that's where challenges start because I didn't have money for breast milk. I remember I had to use Claudina, the cloth napkins, which they were left by my mom from me. So it was a bit of a challenge at the age of 17 years, having to wash napkins and
still
having
get through
to
school as well and breastfeed.
a milk that would last for a day because I had to go back to school.
Right. So it was quite difficult on you, Nompilo. I quickly want to bring Advocate in, particularly on that point. Advocate, particularly also just on the intersectionality of poverty, of gender discrimination, and the lack of education. How does this exacerbate this problem of teenage pregnancy within our communities?
It actually exacerbates it to a great deal because some of the things that happen to the teenage mother or the teenage pregnant, the pregnant teenager are not understood as a result of some of the economic and social limitations that the parents or guardians may have at that time. For example, you have pointed out postpartum depression. But even the change in the body that happens, sometimes the little girl themselves do not understand what is happening, and you find even at home they do not understand. Then you have the added pressure of those who go back to school. That is why they tend to fall by the wayside, because then even at school there isn't sufficient support from their peers, from their teachers. As you know, with breastfeeding mothers, sometimes breast gets engorged with milk, and the girls get teased about, the big breast, and they've gained weight and all sorts of things, the mood swings and all of that. And that can lead to postpartum, but it can also lead to other mental health challenges where you have a lifetime body dysmorphia, for example, where you doubt the integrity of your body in any way. And once you have that in your head, you become this girl who does not deserve anything better. And that's part of the downward spiral. But the unplanned separation of the young mother with the baby is also a very sensitive thing. It's so sensitive, it's difficult even for grown-up women who have planned their babies. So you can imagine a 17-year-old who gets told next week or when the schools open, you have to go back to school or something. So there is a lot of disjointure, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of turmoil, emotional and bodily turmoil that child is going through because they are a child. And in most cases, you find that they are alone. And even the needs that change, getting hungry now because you are breastfeeding, getting thirsty because you are breastfeeding, having to change your diet, having to increase the quality of your diet. But you are in such a situation that you can't even talk to your parents about the fact that now I need to eat more fruit, now I need to eat more vegetables, when you actually are blaming yourself for bringing an extra mouth in the family. So there's that mental torture where you punish yourself almost like, I deserve what's coming to me. I have actually caused shame. I'm putting more burden on my family. And therefore, you die a slow death emotionally. And you can imagine how much of a mother, what quality of a mother would you be? How much would you learn to be a mother in a context like that?
All right. Thank you so much to both of you this evening, Advocate Sepanya-Mogale as well as Nompilo Mkhize, just speaking to us there about the plight of teenage pregnancy in South Africa. Thank you so much for your insights this evening.